A life had been created. Ethan deliberately slowed his movements. He wanted to hear the unfolding drama. Aiden did not look like a happy father-to-be. His expression was dark and foreboding. He mentioned taking precautions. He questioned the child's paternity. Julian looked up with a face of disbelief. Ethan could feel the tension in the spacious penthouse office. Julian insisted he had been faithful. He reminded Aiden of his possessive scent mark. Aiden cut him off with a cold choice. The child could be terminated or Julian could leave. Aiden declared he wanted no distractions in his bed. He left without a backward glance. Julian stood there, his face pale as marble. His entire body trembled uncontrollably. Ethan sighed quietly, picking up a check from the floor. He placed it gently beside Julian. He thought about offering words of comfort. Then he remembered the story's original path. It was better to respect another's destiny. This world was based on a familiar, tropey novel. It featured a toxic alpha and a submissive omega. The main characters were Aiden and Julian. Julian would endure betrayal, loss, and near death. He would still forgive Aiden in the end. They would marry and have 3 children. Ethan, however, was a casualty in their story. Aiden would kill him in a fit of jealousy. After his awakening, Ethan made a plan. He immediately distanced himself from Aiden. He went to study abroad for years. He had only recently returned to New York. Downstairs, Aiden was smoking in the courtyard garden. Smoke obscured his sharply defined features. It reminded Ethan of their younger years. Aiden once claimed Ethan was his favorite. Aiden asked about Julian's condition. Despite his cruelty, he still cared for his fated partner. Ethan offered a gentle, practiced smile. He reported Julian was physically fine. His emotional state was another matter. Aiden's face darkened again with irritation. He called Julian a bothersome, frustrating thing. Ethan suggested omegas were fragile. A little coddling would solve the problem. The powerful CEO simply scoffed at the idea. Aiden complained he did enough for Julian already. Ethan's face showed no reaction to the arrogance. He suggested they go out for a drink. Aiden's mood finally seemed to improve slightly. He agreed, saying Ethan was always so understanding. At a chic downtown lounge, Aiden gathered his friends. They spoke openly about their private affairs. One friend offered Aiden some advice. He suggested dating a beta to avoid drama. Betas lacked sensitivity periods and had stable emotions. The man gave Aiden a meaningful look. He added they were physically resilient, and most importantly, they could not get pregnant. Aiden's hand paused on its way to his glass. He instinctively glanced over at Ethan. The speaker realized his mistake. He awkwardly apologized to Ethan. Ethan adjusted his glasses, completely unbothered. He told the man it was no problem, but the atmosphere had grown colder. Ethan stood up gracefully. He announced he was getting a new drink from the bar. Once he left, the conversation reignited behind him. His sharp ears caught snippets of their talk. Someone commented on Ethan's impressive height and physique. They found his suited appearance incredibly alluring. A friend asked Aiden if he ever felt tempted. Another admitted he would pursue Ethan himself. But Ethan seemed too intimidating and unapproachable. At the bar, Ethan ordered a light craft cocktail. He sipped it slowly, enjoying his solitude. Aiden approached him later. Ethan was chatting with a well-built alpha. The alpha was guiding Ethan's hand over his abs. Ethan even lifted the man's shirt for a better look. He then smiled up at the muscular stranger. The alpha excitedly reached for Ethan's hand again. Aiden slapped it away with a sharp command to leave. The other alpha started to get angry. Aiden unleashed his powerful S-class pheromones. The man paled and retreated reluctantly. Ethan sat quietly through the entire exchange. He did not say a single word. Aiden then began to speak to him. He said if Ethan wanted to date, he could help. Aiden offered to make proper introductions. He warned that men in bars were untrustworthy. Ethan laughed until tears formed in his eyes. He placed a hand on Aiden's shoulder. He pointed out Aiden was insulting himself. He leaned in very close. Aiden caught a scent that was not a pheromone. It was the subtle, rich aroma of oud wood. It was gentle yet possessed an unattainable quality. The scent created a powerful desire for conquest. Aiden seemed momentarily lost in thought. Ethan finished laughing and spoke again. He told Aiden he had a preference for good physiques. His eyes swept over Aiden's midsection. He said any partner must be at least Aiden's equal. Ethan knew his own appearance was now perfectly calibrated. His cheeks were flushed, his eyes bright. He projected an image of cool, detached seduction. He had practiced this look hundreds of times. He was confident Aiden would take the bait. Aiden's grip on his glass tightened instantly. His other arm snaked around Ethan's waist. He pulled Ethan forcefully toward him. A soft click echoed in the sudden silence. The bar's music had stopped for a moment. They both turned their heads. Julian was standing there. Large, pearl-like tears rolled down his face. His white shirt made him look vulnerable. His eyes were filled with disappointment and pain. He whispered that he hated Aiden. Then he stumbled and ran out of the bar. Ethan urged Aiden to go after him. The neighborhood was rough and Julian was unstable. His scent could attract unwanted attention. Aiden snapped out of his daze and hurried out. With his target gone, Ethan lost interest. He left without saying goodbye to Aiden's friends. He arrived home to a quiet, darkened house. Opening the door, he saw a tall figure on the patio. His relaxed shoulders immediately tensed. The man heard the sound and turned around. His handsome, severe features were like a winter landscape. Seeing Ethan, his gaze became sharp. Felt like invisible shards of ice. Ethan wondered what he had done wrong this time. He stood frozen by the door, shoes still on. His hands were pressed flat against his pants. He quietly greeted his older stepbrother, Caleb. Caleb watched him for 2 long seconds. Then he responded with a low, quiet hum. His voice was deep, tinged with the night. Ethan waited for more, but nothing came. He finally bent down to take off his shoes. He asked Caleb why he was still awake. Caleb raised a glass of water to his lips. He did not answer the question. Ethan tried again, saying he was going to his room. Caleb gently set his glass down. The sound of glass on marble was sharp. It echoed clearly in the silent house. Caleb said he had no interest in Ethan's private life, but he advised Ethan to clear any alpha scent before returning. Blood rushed to Ethan's face. Private life, alpha, pheromones. Ethan was stunned by Caleb's accusation. He took a deep breath before turning around. He explained he had drinks with Aiden. The scent must have transferred then. Caleb simply stated his disinterest. He turned and went up a separate staircase. Ethan felt a lump forming in his throat. He could barely breathe. Later, soaking in the bathtub, he relaxed slightly. He heard the roar of Caleb's sports car leaving. His tense shoulders finally slumped. He slowly submerged himself in the warm water. He and Caleb had a difficult relationship. They were like characters in a corporate drama. 2 half-brothers vying for the family fortune. But the competition felt entirely one-sided. Caleb never truly saw Ethan as a rival. It was not dismissal based on his beta status. It was the disregard of someone with absolute power. He saw Ethan as an inconvenient object. Most of their generation relied on family prestige. Caleb was different. He had already surpassed their father's generation. He was rational, calm, ruthless, and proud. Few could match his intimidating presence. Ethan was deeply afraid of him. Other alphas might toy with his feelings. Caleb, on a bad day, might toy with his life, and perhaps his mother's life as well. For many days, Aiden did not call. It seemed he was actively avoiding Ethan. Ethan heard gossip from mutual friends. Aiden had a new lover. It was a beta with a cool, reserved demeanor. A friend described Aiden's devotion. He was doting on the new man. He would do anything for him. Ethan listened with a faint smile. He questioned if Aiden had found true love. The friend invited him to see for himself. A gala was being held at the Grand Astoria. Aiden was hosting the event for his new partner. He wanted to introduce the beta to their social circle. Because of Aiden's status, everyone wanted his attention. But he only spoke to his closest friends. So everyone else flocked to his companion. The proud and aloof beta received all the focus. When Ethan walked into the ballroom, things changed. Aiden's assistant whispered something to him. Aiden and those nearby turned to look. Many people gasped upon seeing Ethan's face. Some less subtle guests stared at the new beta. Aiden seemed surprised by Ethan's arrival. He instinctively moved to block the new beta from view. He asked Ethan why he was there. Ethan raised a champagne flute to toast him. He jokingly asked if he should leave. The gesture allowed him a clear view of the beta. The resemblance was undeniable. He looked about 50% like Ethan. It would be 60% without his pale face. Ethan addressed the man as Mr. Ryan. He introduced himself as Aiden's childhood friend. Ryan's eyes were locked on Ethan. His knuckles were white from gripping his glass. People who Ryan had snubbed began to whisper. They mocked Ryan's earlier arrogance. He was just a substitute, a mere copy. Now the original had arrived. The substitute was too scared to even speak. Ethan was a true heir of the Shaw family. Ryan was a nobody who could never replace him. Ethan pretended not to hear the comments. He leaned close to Aiden, his eyes full of mirth. He spoke just loud enough for Ryan to hear. He commented on their striking resemblance. He joked that his mother must have had twins. Aiden was suddenly pulled away. A hand swung toward Ethan's face with full force. Ethan managed to step back slightly, but a sharp nail still scratched his chin. Blood trickled down his neck. He hissed in pain. Aiden finally reacted, shouting Ethan's name. Ryan screamed at Aiden not to go near him. Aiden turned and slapped Ryan back. An S-class alpha strength was immense. The blow knocked out one of Ryan's teeth. Aiden ordered him to get out. He never wanted to see him again. Ethan stepped forward and took Aiden's hand. He gently told Aiden not to be angry. He insisted that he was fine. Ryan's furious gaze looked murderous. The dramatic scene quickly became a trending topic. It spread like wildfire through their circles. Aiden later gifted Ethan a luxury car as an apology. Photos of the gift fueled more speculation. People wondered if a wedding was imminent. Ethan smilingly denied the rumors, but Aiden's attitude remained ambiguous. He neither confirmed nor denied anything. At events, his hand would often rest on Ethan's waist. Many assumed Ethan was just being modest. They began rehashing his history with Aiden. Everyone said the playboy was finally settling down. They recalled how Ethan only ever cared for Aiden. If Ethan had not gone abroad, no one else would have had a chance. His mother called him overjoyed. She said they were a perfect match. A childhood friendship finally blooming into love. Ethan felt a headache coming on. He told her she was getting ahead of herself. She mentioned his father also knew. He wanted to know when Ethan would bring Aiden home. Ethan replied that nothing was certain yet. He was sitting on the living room sofa. Caleb suddenly returned home. Ethan quickly changed the subject of his call. He said it all depended on Aiden's intentions. He hoped his feelings were not one-sided. Caleb turned his head. Ethan gave him a slightly embarrassed smile. It was the look of someone caught revealing a secret. He greeted his brother. His mother heard Caleb's name and quickly ended the call. Caleb was taking off his coat. Ethan eagerly went to hang it up for him. Caleb let go of the coat without hesitation. He bent down to change his shoes. He told Ethan their father wanted to see them tomorrow. Ethan agreed. Caleb straightened up but did not leave. Ethan looked up at him with confusion. The ceiling light was behind Caleb. He cast his tall frame in silhouette. The alpha's imposing figure completely overshadowed him. Caleb seemed to have had a few drinks. The sharp, botanical scent of gin filled the air. It seemed to creep up the collar of Ethan's shirt. Ethan softened his voice. He asked if Caleb had been drinking. Caleb confirmed it. He reached out and touched Ethan's chin. A gentle pressure made Ethan tilt his head up. Caleb's cool gaze fell on the scratch from Ryan. Ethan explained it was a small cut. He assured Caleb it had already healed. Caleb released him with a non-committal scoff. He walked past Ethan toward his room. Ethan touched the spot where Caleb's fingers had been. He felt Caleb had wanted to say more, but for some reason he had changed his mind. Mr. Shaw was Ethan and Caleb's father. He suffered from pheromone dysregulation syndrome. The illness was not fatal, but it caused muscle atrophy in strong alphas. Their pheromones would diminish. They would become the ordinary people they despised. In severe cases, they were weaker than omegas. This fate was worse than death for them. Mr. Shaw had made an effort to look presentable. He seemed to be in good spirits. He and Caleb discussed business matters. Ethan's mother asked about his progress with Aiden. The men's conversation paused for a moment. Ethan took the chance to speak. He said he was still pursuing Aiden. His mother hesitated, aware of Aiden's reputation. She then continued her advice. If things remained ambiguous, Ethan should move on. She stroked the end of his hair. She said her son deserved the best. Ethan held her hand, reassuring her. During lunch, Mr. Shaw revealed his true purpose. He wanted Ethan to have a seat on the board. Ethan was stunned and looked at his mother. Her confused expression showed she was also unaware. Caleb continued eating as if he heard nothing. Mr. Shaw repeated his statement. Caleb put his chopsticks down with a sharp click. In their strict household, this was a sign of disrespect. Ethan and his mother wished they could disappear. Caleb finally spoke. He had no objections if the other directors agreed. This was clearly a deflection. The board always followed Caleb's lead. Mr. Shaw insisted it was an order. He did not care about the process. He only wanted to see the result. Caleb held his ground. He stated the corporation had its own protocols. Mr. Shaw became enraged. He reminded Caleb that he was not dead yet. Caleb did not argue further, but his gaze did not yield. Ethan's mother tried to mediate. Ethan kicked her under the table. This was not a fight for them to enter. Disagreeing would anger Mr. Shaw. Agreeing would infuriate Caleb even more. But his mother was a brave soul. She did not understand his. She said Ethan was still young. He could have a few more years to enjoy life. Her words implied he coveted Caleb's power. Caleb's cold, unforgiving eyes landed on Ethan. Ethan had no choice but to speak. He told them he was too inexperienced for the board. His father said he was already 21. At that age, Caleb was established in the company. Ethan replied he could not compare to his brilliant brother, but he couldn't completely reject his father's offer. He revealed he had interviewed at their company's research institute. He had just received an offer yesterday. His mother finally caught on. She added that Ethan loved research. He knew nothing about management or finance. He would just be a small cog in the machine. She urged them to stop talking and eat. After leaving the hospital, Caleb went to his car. Ethan rushed to stop him. He insisted he knew nothing about his father's plan. He assured Caleb he went through the proper hiring process. He promised not to cause any trouble. He begged Caleb not to be angry. Caleb's anger had not subsided. He had his assistant pry Ethan's hands off the car. Then he drove away. Ethan stood there, his eyes slightly red. He watched until Caleb's car disappeared. His performance of humility was perfect. Caleb's assistant, Kent, offered to get him a cab. He patted Ethan's shoulder comfortingly. Just as Ethan was about to reply, they were interrupted. It was Aiden. Aiden's expression was a little awkward. Ethan's gaze shifted downward slightly. Aiden quickly let go of the Omega he was holding. A flicker of hurt crossed Ethan's face. It was quickly masked by a gentle smile. He asked if this was Aiden's new boyfriend. The Omega was beautiful. The young man's initial hostility turned to shyness. Aiden coughed to cover his embarrassment. He asked if Caleb had told Ethan. Told him what? Kent leaned in and whispered in Ethan's ear. Last night, Caleb saw Aiden on a blind date with this Omega. Ethan understood now. Caleb must have wanted to warn him. The smile on his face almost faltered. Aiden grew more awkward and quickly left. Kent soon uncovered the full story. The rumors about Ethan and Aiden had reached Aiden's parents. They did not want a beta who could not produce heirs. They began arranging dates for Aiden with Omegas. The dates took place at the hospital. They were conducting pheromone compatibility tests. A higher match meant a higher chance of an alpha heir. All results were being falsified to show 80%. A 70% match was already considered rare. Aiden's arrogant parents were aiming higher. With an 80% match found, they hoped for more. They would keep this Omega on the side. Meanwhile, they would search for a better match. This deception gave Ethan more time for his own plans. Kent understood and asked if he should intervene. Ethan told him not to. He instructed Kent to maintain his current distance. Kent opened the car door for him. Ethan got in the car. He finally let out a long breath. He understood his father's urgency now. Mr. Shaw wanted to raise Ethan's value. It was a strategic move for the marriage alliance. Aiden's family company was a leader in medical tech. They had a promising treatment for his father's illness, but research on it had stalled. The disease was rare, not profitable. They preferred developing a new commercial suppressant. Mr. Shaw wanted Ethan to get access to that research. He wanted his son-in-law to cure him. Ethan thought for a moment. He pulled out his phone and made a call. He instructed someone to lure Julian to the Grand Astoria. When Aiden saw Julian again, the scene was ugly. Julian was on his knees, apologizing to an alpha. He was using his server's jacket to wipe the man's shoes. The alpha was not satisfied. He raised his foot to kick Julian. Aiden roared like a protective lion. He rushed over and shielded Julian. He beat up the other alpha. Then he cradled Julian, whispering words of comfort. The Omega Aiden had brought for the night was dismissed. Ethan paid him off with a handsome sum. Aiden asked Ethan to check Julian for injuries. Ethan smiled and agreed. Aiden and Julian's romance was rekindled. But Aiden's parents were still in the dark. They continued to introduce him to new Omegas. These prospects came from powerful families. Aiden was reluctant to let them go. He comforted Julian with sweet words. At the same time, he entertained the other Omegas. Ethan played his part perfectly. He was the devoted lover, lost in his affection. He treated Omega's Aiden had hurt. He paid off those who became too attached. He acted as a shield against the arranged dates. He made everyone believe Aiden was only devoted to him. Aiden's life was incredibly pleasant during this time. He told Ethan how wonderful he was. Ethan's smile was tinged with bitterness. He replied that he only wanted Aiden to be happy. A friend of theirs chimed in. He told Aiden he should just marry Ethan. Ethan loved him and didn't mind his affairs. He was handsome, kind, and from a good family. Anyone else would treasure him. The friend warned Aiden he would regret losing him. Aiden started to take the advice seriously. He began spending more time with Ethan. The affection in his eyes grew deeper, but his double life was eventually exposed. Julian threatened suicide, and Aiden's family applied pressure. Aiden's blissful period was over. He was now overwhelmed with stress. Ethan's steadfast support became even more valuable. Aiden's mother and Julian conspired against Ethan. They attempted to have him assaulted. When the plot failed, Ethan tearfully refused to press charges. He did it all for Aiden's sake. Aiden's love for him reached its peak. He called Ethan, his voice full of anger. He had just fought with his family. He promised Ethan they would get married. Ethan calmly soothed him over the phone. He said he believed him. Aiden continued his rant. Ethan grew impatient listening to him. He slipped on a robe and went for a drink. The refrigerator was stocked with Caleb's preferred beverages. Ethan grabbed a can of lychee soda. Aiden was still talking. Ethan finally cut him off. He told Aiden he understood everything. He loved him and would wait for him. His voice was as gentle as water. Aiden hung up, finally satisfied. Ethan closed the refrigerator door. He caught a glimpse of Caleb in the doorway. He had no idea when he arrived. Ethan was startled but recovered quickly. He greeted his brother, feigning surprise. Caleb's response was a tired grunt. The small pantry felt cramped with him in it. Ethan felt a strange sense of nervousness. He offered to get Caleb a drink. Caleb walked past him to the fridge. Ethan stepped back to give him space. Caleb seemed to have just showered. He still had a dampness about him. The fridge light illuminated his sharp jawline. A droplet of water traced a path down his neck. His body wash smelled of iris flowers. Ethan averted his eyes. He wondered if he could slip past him. He then noticed Caleb's slightly flushed nape. Was it his sensitivity period? That would explain the absence of staph. Alphas and omegas in heat were volatile. Most medical staff were betas for this reason. But these periods usually induced a feverish state. Caleb seemed completely unaffected. He wasn't even wearing a scent-blocking patch. An omega could accuse him of harassment. Ethan was lost in his thoughts. Caleb suddenly took the soda from his hand. Ethan quickly tried to get it back. He told Caleb he had already drunk from it. With a sharp crack, the can was crushed. Caleb tossed the lychee soda into a nearby bin. Ethan was stunned. He forgot to pull his hand away from Caleb's. Through the thin silk of Caleb's pajamas, his skin was hot. Ethan's eyes were wide with confusion. He whispered Caleb's name. Caleb turned slightly, his eyes unreadable. His long fingers covered the back of Ethan's hand. He told Ethan that taking things was stealing. One should not touch what belongs to others. The words were a clear, pointed remark. A wave of shame washed over Ethan. He apologized to his brother. His posture was completely submissive. Caleb brushed his hand away. That night, Ethan filled every fridge with lychee soda. He also prepared suppressants, fever reducers, and patches. He created a nutritious meal plan. He brewed calming herbal teas. He even contacted 3 willing omegas. This last preparation was a secret, of course. It was just a precaution. An alpha in heat was very territorial. The few beta staff were afraid of Caleb. For 2 days, Caleb did not leave his bedroom. Ethan had to check his temperature at night. He also cleaned Caleb's room during the day. He told Caleb he had not slept for 2 nights. He offered to get him a mild sedative. Caleb had just taken a cold shower. A towel was wrapped around his waist. He stood by the window drinking ice water. Water dripped from his hair down his muscular back. He refused the sedative. He asked for another suppressant injection instead. Caleb sat with his back to Ethan. Ethan took the glass from his hand. It was so cold he almost dropped it. He told Caleb the injection would work soon. He advised him against drinking more ice water. Caleb's back muscles were well-defined and strong. His body was tense from fighting his instincts. An Omega would have fainted at the sight. The glands on his neck were inflamed. Ethan felt a surge of curiosity. He asked what Caleb's pheromones smelled like. Caleb turned his head to look at him. His eyes were red-rimmed from the strain. A dark, primal urge flickered in his gaze. He told Ethan his scent was oud wood. The day after Caleb's cycle ended, Ethan got a call. The Research Institute wanted him to start work. Caleb was fastening the buttons on his suit. Ethan stood on his toes to help with his tie. After adjusting it, he looked up at Caleb. His eyes shone with admiration. He thanked his brother sincerely. The institute was full of academic purists. They hated administrative distractions. The director, Dr. Evans, learned of Ethan's past experience. He had been a teaching assistant for a long time, so Dr. Evans began taking him on trips. Ethan helped with logistics and presentations. This time, they were going to a conference in Chicago. Caleb was also attending. Kent did not accompany them. A new, inexperienced assistant was assigned to Caleb. She reminded Ethan of a naive drama heroine. She either messed up Caleb's documents or spilled coffee. She could not remember where she put basic items. Faced with Caleb's darkening mood, she would just cry. She would whisper apologies about her clumsiness. The other researchers were socially inept. No one stepped in to help. Ethan finally intervened with his own blanket. Caleb was sitting, his suit soaked with coffee. Ethan approached him. He offered his blanket, fresh from the dry cleaners. He assured Caleb it was unused. Caleb's murderous gaze shifted from the assistant. His well-manicured hand accepted the blanket. The assistant finally snapped out of her daze. She scrambled to clean up the mess. In Chicago, the assistant treated Ethan like a savior. She asked for his help with every small task, but she still managed to make mistakes. She placed a meal with cilantro in front of Caleb. Ethan almost lost his composure. It was Caleb's most hated food. Ethan quickly swapped it for a steak, but it was too late. Caleb fired her before they even returned home. Until a new assistant could arrive, Ethan filled the role. Dr. Evans asked if he could handle it. Ethan smiled and said it was no problem. He remembered Caleb's coffee was 7/10 sweet. He sent documents to Caleb's email 2 hours early. He memorized the profiles of every important guest. He knew what Caleb wanted from a single frown. Even his colleagues joked about his efficiency. That evening, Caleb drank a lot at a networking event. Ethan brought a hydrating drink to his hotel room. Caleb was rubbing his temples on the sofa. Ethan thought for a moment. He went to his own room to get an eye massager. Caleb asked what it was. Ethan explained it was for relieving fatigue. He helped Caleb put it on. With Caleb's sharp eyes hidden, Ethan felt bolder. His focus shifted to the lower half of Caleb's face. Caleb had a strong nose and thin, defined lips. He looked like a high-fashion model. He leaned back and seemed to fall asleep. He asked about the next day's schedule. Ethan turned his gaze away. He walked to the closet while answering. The morning was for lectures, the afternoon for a tour. It was all at the research facility. The atmosphere would be more relaxed. He asked his brother for a style preference. A dark gray suit with a light blue shirt. He suggested forgoing a tie for a more casual look. Caleb removed the massager and glanced at the options. His expression was calm and rested. He told Ethan to decide for him. After the tour, they just had to wait for the contracts. Caleb gave the team a day off. A friendly colleague asked Ethan for help. He needed to pick a gift for his girlfriend. Ethan remembered Caleb's suit needed cufflinks. He decided to go with him. After nearly 3 hours, he found the perfect pair. They were made of sapphire. His colleague was stunned by the price. He commented that Ethan was too devoted to Caleb. Ethan just smiled at him. He asked the jeweler to engrave Caleb's initials. On the way back, a light rain began to fall. In the hotel lobby, they ran into Caleb. Ethan gave him the small box with the cufflinks. Caleb was on the phone. He took the box and put it in his pocket absently. Later, Ethan and his colleague finished dinner. Caleb was still on the phone. He was standing by the lake, unprotected from the rain. His hair and clothes were soaked. Ethan found an umbrella to take to him. Just as he approached, Caleb ended his call. He took the box out of his pocket. He looked at it for a moment. Then he closed it and threw it into the lake. He walked away without looking back. His colleague instinctively glanced at Ethan's face. Ethan did not know what expression he was wearing. He knew it could not have been a pleasant one. The lake was not very large or deep, but it took him 4 hours to find the box. His colleague wanted to call for help. Ethan refused, so the man stayed and helped him search. When he finally found them, he no longer wanted them. He felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. It was like climbing a series of steep mountains. He thought he had reached the destination, but he found even taller, harder mountains ahead. He was utterly spent, physically and mentally. He pressed the sapphire cufflinks into his colleague's hand. He thanked him for his help. He explained he had spent a long time choosing them. He offered them as a token of gratitude. The next day, the new assistant arrived. He dressed Caleb in a black suit. Caleb's imposing aura had returned. Ethan watched him from the back of the group. After the final presentation, his colleague went on stage. He was wearing a suit for the occasion. The sapphire cufflinks glittered under the lights. Caleb suddenly turned and looked at Ethan. Ethan shifted his gaze to the window. They did not speak for the rest of the trip. Back in New York, they avoided each other. Their offices were in separate buildings. At home, Ethan did his best not to cross paths. One day, he opened his door as Caleb was coming downstairs. He immediately retreated back into his room. He heard Caleb pause in the hallway for half a minute. Then the footsteps continued. They did not see each other again until their father summoned them. This time, Aiden and his parents were also there. Aiden's mother greeted Ethan warmly. She held his hand and praised him like a daughter-in-law. Mr. Shaw made an announcement. He and Aiden's father approved of the union. He said they should set a date for the engagement. Aiden put his arm around Ethan's shoulder. He reminded Ethan of his promise. Aiden's family had agreed to collaborate on the research. Mr. Shaw gave Ethan 10% of the company's shares. This would be his dowry. Mr. Shaw announced the engagement party with a benevolent smile. He was playing the part of a loving father. Aiden's mother agreed enthusiastically. She suggested they sign the business contracts at the party. Ethan instinctively looked at Caleb. Caleb let out a cold, cynical laugh. He turned and walked out. Mr. Shaw called after him. He ordered Caleb to have the legal team draft the contracts. Caleb turned back. His eyes were filled with scorn. It was directed at Aiden's family, at their father, and at Ethan. He said his father could do as he pleased. He could offer up his illegitimate son to curry favor. But Caleb was the current executive director. Mr. Shaw furiously threw a water glass at him. Ethan's mother rushed to stop him. Her eyes were full of pain and pleading. Caleb walked out the door. The engagement proceeded as planned. Invitations were sent to everyone of importance. But 2 days before the party, Aiden's family backed out. They found an Omega with a perfect pheromone match for Aiden. The Omega was Julian, the long-lost heir of the Vance family. Now he was known as Julian Vance. The Vance family fortune was far greater than Mr. Shaw's offer. Moreover, Julian was pregnant with Aiden's child. A gender test had already been done. The child had a high probability of being an S-class alpha. The engagement party still happened, but the couple was now Aiden and Julian. Mr. Shaw was furious. The Vance family was Caleb's maternal family. The patriarch, Mr. Vance, was Caleb's biological grandfather. Years ago, Mr. Shaw had cheated on Caleb's mother. Mistresses had flaunted their affairs in her face. Caleb's mother, who suffered from depression, took her own life. Mr. Vance hated Mr. Shaw with a passion. The alliance with Aiden's family was now impossible. Mr. Shaw would never get his cure. He called Ethan a useless waste. He struggled out of his hospital bed and slapped him. Ethan's mother was not there. Ethan took the blow without flinching. Mr. Shaw kicked and screamed at him. He accused Ethan of being unable to keep one alpha. He yelled for half an hour until he was exhausted. Then he collapsed back onto the bed and told Ethan to get out. Ethan returned home and ran into Caleb. He stepped back to let him pass. Caleb stared at the mark on his face for a long time. But in the end, he said nothing. There was nothing to say. They were born to be enemies. Late that night, his phone rang. It was the hospital. They said his father was throwing a tantrum. His mother was missing. He tried calling his mother's phone. It rang, but no one answered. He threw on some clothes and rushed out. It was a bitterly cold winter night. He ignored his raging father at the hospital. He focused on finding his mother. He called all her friends, but no one had seen her. The temperature was below freezing. Ethan felt a rising sense of panic. By dawn, Aiden heard the news and came to find him. He promised he would help find Ethan's mother. He opened his car door for Ethan. He wanted him to get warm. A small disc fell out from the door pocket. Contained a video. His mother was blindfolded, bound, and hanging over a cliff. Ethan recognized the location. He had seen it in a photo in Caleb's study. The photo was of Caleb, his mother, and his grandfather. The background was his mother's favorite seaside spot. It was also where she was buried. Ethan's eyes were bloodshot. He silently grabbed the car keys and started the engine. Aiden tried to stop him. He asked where Ethan was going. He begged him to wait for backup. Ethan grabbed a baseball bat from the passenger seat. He swung it hard at Aiden's hands. Aiden dodged and Ethan sped away. The car went faster and faster. Rage burned through him like a wildfire. The Vance family had gone too far. All strategy and reason disappeared. He wanted to kill them all. Just before he reached their estate, his car was stopped. Aiden's men had intercepted him. Aiden pulled him forcefully from the car. Ethan turned and punched him. Aiden told him to calm down. The blood on Aiden's lip was a startling red. Ethan paused for a moment. His phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. He answered it desperately. The voice on the other end was Kent's. He informed Ethan that his mother was safe with him. Ethan felt a wave of relief. Then the world went black and he collapsed. He woke up in a hospital room. Aiden was on the balcony on the phone. He was making one call after another. Ethan knew he was dealing with his parents and the Vances. Aiden noticed he was awake. He quickly hung up and came inside. He helped Ethan sit up, fluffing a pillow for him. Ethan said he was fine and wanted to go home. He would leave after the 4 drip was finished. Aiden's phone rang again, and he silenced it. Finally, he turned it off completely. Ethan told him to go attend to his business. Aiden's assistant could stay with him. Aiden was reluctant to leave. Ethan took his hand. He promised he would not do anything foolish. Aiden, clearly pressed for time, finally left. Ethan got his phone back. He learned Aiden had left his own engagement party. He had rushed out as soon as he heard about Ethan's mother. Now, the Vance family was facing public humiliation. The gossip was that Aiden's heart was still with Ethan. The Vance heir was just a substitute with a child. The childhood sweethearts were the true couple. Aiden's assistant brought him a glass of water. He told Ethan that Aiden's feelings were genuine. Ethan did not correct the misunderstanding. He just smiled sadly and asked if that was true. He then asked about Julian Vance. The assistant hinted that Aiden's affection had waned. Julian's constant drama had worn out their relationship. The message was clear. Ethan just smiled without a word. The Vance family didn't know his mother was safe. They sent someone to remind Ethan of his place. The man told him not to be greedy. He warned he would lose everything he had. Ethan pretended to finally understand the kidnapping. He stood in the rain for an afternoon. He looked completely heartbroken. When Caleb got home, Ethan was already half drunk. The house reeked of alcohol. Ethan did not greet him as usual. Caleb stood at the entrance for a moment. He came in and opened the windows. A cold wind blew an empty bottle onto the carpet. Ethan finally looked up, his eyes red. He called out his brother's name hoarsely. Caleb stood in the shadows, his face unreadable. Ethan reached for another bottle. Caleb walked over and took it from him. He told Ethan to stop drinking and go to his room. Ethan released the bottle but did not move. Caleb did not leave either. Ethan looked up at him. Caleb's handsome face was creased with a frown. He seemed to despise Ethan's current state. Ethan blinked, and large tears began to fall. He asked his brother if he was useless. Caleb did not answer. Ethan continued speaking, wiping tears on his sleeve. He was a beta who couldn't even serve as a marriage pawn. The man he loved professed love while sleeping around. He was replaced the day before his own engagement. He had tried for years to improve their relationship, but Caleb only seemed to hate him more. All he wanted was for his mother to be safe. Now he did not even know where she was. His voice broke with a sob. The tears would not stop. He grabbed Caleb's sleeve and begged for an answer. He asked what he had to do to get his mother back. He promised he would give up everything. He would renounce his shares and quit his job. He and his mother would leave the family forever. He would never appear before Caleb again. He pleaded with Caleb to let his mother go. He begged him to consider her years of quiet obedience. He finally broke down, crying softly. It was the sound of someone who did not dare to cry loudly. Ethan had always maintained a calm, dignified composure. This emotional outburst was rare. Caleb's lips were pressed into a thin line. He could not find the words to speak. He could not say he was not responsible. He could not claim ignorance of the situation. He had found out about the Vances plot. His grandfather had told him to stay out of it. Mr. Vance had taken full responsibility. He had claimed it was revenge for his daughter. He had promised Caleb would remain clean. Now, Ethan's requests were exactly what he wanted. But for some reason, Caleb felt a tightness in his chest. It was as if he was the one suffocating. Ethan cried until his eyes were dry. He let go of Caleb's wrinkled sleeve. He stood up, his head bowed. He apologized for ruining his brother's clothes. His voice was raspy. Caleb finally found his voice. He promised he would help find her. Ethan nodded and thanked him. He told Caleb to go rest. He would clean up the living room. But as he turned, the room began to spin. He fainted into Caleb's arms. The afternoon in the rain had taken its toll. He was burning with a high fever. Caleb carried him to his room. Ethan made sure Caleb saw the items on his bookshelf. Then he allowed himself to lose consciousness completely. On the shelf were gifts from their childhood. They were small, thoughtless trinkets. An unwanted music box from another student. A cheap glass pendant from a curtain tassel. Caleb had given them to him casually, but Ethan had kept them all. Ordinarily, Caleb might see this as manipulative, but after tonight's confession, they looked different. They were symbols of a younger brother's desperate love. His mother was returned the next afternoon. She was traumatized by the ordeal. She was anxious around everyone except Ethan. Ethan signed away his shares without a word. He placed the documents in front of Caleb. He also submitted his resignation from the institute. He left behind all the family's assets. He only took a few changes of clothes. He paused before addressing Caleb. He called him Mr. Shaw. He explained the cards and keys were all there. He would file for divorce on his mother's behalf later. Caleb asked him where they would live. Ethan gave a sad smile. He assured Caleb they had no keys to other properties. Caleb insisted that was not his meaning. Ethan said he would rent a place for now. He would find a job and make a decision then. Caleb said nothing more. Ethan bowed and turned to leave. As his hand touched the doorknob, Caleb spoke. His voice was hoarse. He asked if Ethan had always been afraid of him. Ethan did not turn back. He told him about a New Year's from long ago. Mr. Vance had visited. His mother asked him to bring fruit to the study. He overheard them talking about him and his mother. Mr. Vance was worried he would fight for the inheritance. Caleb had replied that their father was still young. There would always be someone new. He had said it was better to have a powerless woman. If Ethan grew up and caused trouble, he could be disposed of. Caleb was speechless. Ethan turned to look at him. He was just a child then. He did not know how to protect himself. He did not know what it meant to be obedient. So he put himself in the lowest position. He tried to please Caleb in every possible way. He never complained, just hid his pain. As he grew up, he realized it did not matter. Caleb would always hate him. So he left the country. He knew they blamed his mother for Caleb's mother's death. But his mother had been deceived. His father had claimed to be a single, small business owner. She did not know she was destroying a family. She married into the Shaw family for Ethan's sake. He told Caleb to say what he wanted about him. But his mother was a victim too. He asked him not to speak ill of her in her presence again. Caleb started to explain what he said that day. Ethan shook his head, unwilling to listen. He thanked the Shaw family for their care and left. The moment he left, Aiden called. He offered Ethan one of his apartments. Ethan did not refuse. He settled his mother in a top-tier care facility. Then he moved into the apartment. He also asked for a job at Aiden's family hospital. Aiden hesitated. Ethan understood his concerns. He promised he would not touch any core research. He just needed a lab. He explained his work on a second-generation suppressant. He had made significant progress in his studies. Aiden agreed. Ethan hid the scorn in his eyes. He told Aiden he was a true friend. He said Aiden was the only one willing to help him now. Aiden looked at Ethan's slender, graceful neck. He leaned in, intending to kiss him. A timely call from Julian interrupted. Aiden looked at Ethan guiltily. Ethan remained gentle and understanding. He told Aiden to go ahead. Aiden promised he would visit often. Ethan scoffed internally. Promises of marriage had become promises of visits. He was being kept like a mistress. He played his part, deceiving Aiden completely. Kent called him with a question. The apartment complex was known for kept women. He asked if Ethan wanted a new place. Ethan said it was fine. Kent then delivered some important news. Aiden and Julian had officially registered their marriage. Ethan laughed, saying it was expected. Aiden was ambitious and would not pass up the Vance fortune. He instructed Kent to leak news of his research. He told him not to mention his name. When Caleb investigated, Kent was to reveal Ethan's involvement. Then he was to inform Julian about Ethan's lab. Kent acted quickly. The news of the new suppressant spread rapidly. On the third day, Julian came to confront Ethan. She accused him of being manipulative. Ethan feigned ignorance. Julian was no longer the timid Omega. She was arrogant and aggressive. She told Ethan not to play dumb. She warned the cast-off son not to challenge her. Ethan dropped his facade. He told Julian it wasn't his fault Aiden loved him. He challenged her to stop Aiden from seeing him. Julian was pale with rage. Ethan leaned in and whispered to her. He described Aiden's nights with him. While Julian suffered through pregnancy alone, Aiden was in his bed. Julian screamed and tried to slap him. A hand caught her wrist before she could. It was Caleb. He stated that no one else would discipline his family. He threw Julian's hand away and stood before Ethan. He told Ethan to come back with him. Julian cried out for her cousin. The title made Ethan pause for a second. He told Caleb he was no longer part of the family. His expression was mournful, a stark contrast to his earlier demeanor. Julian insisted Ethan was faking it. Caleb showed no affection for his new cousin. He told her to get lost. Ethan lowered his head. He told Caleb to take the pregnant Julian home. He had to get back to work. Caleb grabbed his arm, stopping him. He said their father wanted to see him. Ethan stopped struggling and agreed. On the way, he said he needed to change clothes. Caleb drove to the apartment complex. His face was grim when he saw the name. He asked if Aiden had put Ethan there. Ethan pretended not to understand the implication. Caleb's expression was dark. He forced out that it was nothing. At the hospital, Mr. Shaw was a changed man. He acted as if their last encounter never happened. He smiled and offered Ethan freshly imported shrimp. Caleb silently moved the plate in front of Ethan. Ethan picked one up, then put it down. Mr. Shaw asked if it was prepared incorrectly. He remembered that Ethan loved shrimp. Ethan replied quietly. He was allergic to shrimp. Caleb was the one who liked it. The atmosphere became awkward. Mr. Shaw quickly brushed it off. After the meal, he got to the point. He wanted Ethan to return to the family company. He and Caleb had discussed it. The 10% equity was still his. He would also get a seat on the board. Ethan refused immediately. Mr. Shaw held up a hand. He said the Vance family had been punished. Mr. Vance was sent abroad for health reasons. He promised to protect Ethan's mother. Protection was just another word for control. It was a way to force Ethan's return. Mr. Shaw wanted his cure. Caleb wanted the profits from the new suppressant. For these goals, they would sacrifice anything. Ethan found it almost laughable. They were truly father and son. Cold, selfish, and utterly without principle. He reverted to his obedient role. He softly agreed to their terms. After returning, Caleb cut off his contact with Aiden. Aiden blamed everything on Julian. Without Mr. Vance's support, Julian had no power. Aiden returned to his playboy lifestyle. He even brought lovers to their shared home. Julian suffered a miscarriage from the stress. The extended Vance family descended like vultures. They demanded her remaining shares. Aiden felt no remorse. He continued his debauchery. Ethan arranged for the disgraced Ryan to meet him. Aiden fell for him all over again. Caleb seemed to have truly accepted Ethan. He no longer hid their sibling relationship. He mentored Ethan personally in business matters. Ethan handled several major projects successfully. The board members began to respect him. In return, Ethan sold the suppressant patent to the company. He took company shares as payment. Caleb now held 15%. Ethan held 12%. Mr. Shaw also held 15%. A problem arose with an overseas project. Caleb had to leave the country to handle it. Ethan saw him off at the airport. His demeanor was as respectful as ever. Before boarding, Caleb gave him a box. Inside was a sapphire watch. He said it was an early birthday gift. Ethan held out his wrist. Caleb smiled and fastened the watch for him. Ethan admired it for a moment. He thanked his brother sincerely. Caleb reached out and squeezed the back of his neck. The moment Caleb's plane took off, Ethan acted. He and Kent surrounded Mr. Shaw's hospital. He walked into his father's room with a vial. Mr. Shaw greeted him with a smile. He asked what brought Ethan to visit. Ethan placed the vial on the table. Mr. Shaw asked what it was. Ethan told him it was the cure for his illness. The smile vanished from his father's face. He stared at the vial and tried to grab it. Ethan moved it just out of his reach. Mr. Shaw screamed for the cure. Ethan's men restrained him. He finally understood his situation. He threatened Ethan with his mother's safety. Ethan informed him his mother was fine. She was vacationing in Bali. He had even arranged some handsome alpha companions. Mr. Shaw demanded to see Caleb. Ethan told him Caleb was on a plane. His father stared at him with pure hatred. He called him a treacherous son. Ethan calmly explained his offer. A major shareholder was willing to trade his stock for the cure. He was giving his father the first chance. Mr. Shaw refused. Ethan turned to leave without another word. His father stopped him before he took 3 steps. He offered 5% of his shares. Ethan said the other offer was the same. Mr. Shaw gritted his teeth and offered 6. Ethan turned back. He demanded the Vance family's 30% as well. His father's face showed shock, then defeat. He agreed. As Ethan left, Mr. Shaw murmured his name. He claimed he had once treated Ethan with genuine affection. Ethan paused, but did not look back. He wondered if that affection even mattered. He told his father one last thing. Aiden's company never had the cure. The research was a rumor he started himself. Mr. Shaw's face turned ashen. Ethan was satisfied. When Caleb returned, the game was over. Ethan now controlled 20% of the company stock. This was in addition to his original 12%. He was the largest single shareholder. Caleb came to find him, looking weary from travel. Ethan greeted him simply. Caleb studied his face as if seeing him for the first time. He asked when it all started. Ethan remained silent. Caleb strode toward him, but Kent blocked his path. Caleb angrily ordered him to move. He raised a hand, but Ethan stopped him. He told Kent to leave them alone. Kent left reluctantly. Ethan tugged at Caleb's sleeve. It was a familiar, deferential gesture. He asked if Caleb just got off the plane. Caleb's gaze was intense. He pointed out Ethan had called the shareholder meeting. Ethan took a deep breath and looked up. He told Caleb he wanted his position as executive director. He also offered to buy Caleb's shares at top market price. Caleb's suppressed anger finally surfaced. He called Ethan delusional. Ethan calmly presented his trump card. He could trade the Vance shares back to Mr. Vance. Caleb's eyes widened. He accused Ethan of threatening him. Ethan shook his head. He was simply returning the favor. He unbuttoned his shirt. Caleb watched him with cold eyes. But his expression changed when he saw the scars. Ethan pointed to a mark near his heart. It was a bullet wound from an assassination attempt. Another scar was a burn from a red-hot iron. He mentioned other marks from needles. He asked Caleb if he wanted to see more. For the first time, he looked directly into Caleb's eyes. He wanted to see disgust, or pity, or satisfaction. He saw nothing. Caleb was always impossible to read. After a long silence, Caleb reached out. Ethan stepped back before he could touch him. He continued his story. He had only wanted to finish his studies. He planned to get a job and bring his mother over. He wanted to marry a kind beta and adopt children. He told Caleb he never coveted the company, but they had never given him a path to survive. Caleb's voice was strained. He said it was not him. Ethan acknowledged it was the Vances. He smiled faintly and rebuttoned his shirt. He said he had never blamed Caleb. He reminded him the meeting was starting soon. Caleb grabbed his hand. The sapphire watch glinted in the light. He asked if it hurt. Ethan looked at him. He said that was a bad question to ask before a negotiation. Exposing a weakness was a fatal move. Caleb did not let go. Ethan gently freed himself. He admitted that of course it hurt, but over time you get used to it. The shareholder meeting proceeded as planned. Caleb resigned his position. Ethan got everything he wanted. He also fulfilled his promise to Caleb. The first time Caleb saw Ethan, he was not yet 6. He stood in the living room with his mother. His eyes were bright and clear. He looked clean and smelled of books. He did not look like he came from poverty. His father told him to greet his new mother and brother. Caleb ignored them, smashed a cup, and went upstairs. At first, Ethan was not afraid of him. He would follow him and try to talk to him. Then one day he stopped. Whenever Caleb came near, he would shrink away. He would watch him with cautious eyes. But he was always there to help when needed. His father enrolled Ethan in his school. Their family secrets were common knowledge. Ethan was bullied and isolated. Caleb knew, but he did not care. His own mother had just died. He found a cruel satisfaction in Ethan's suffering. One day, Ethan asked his mother for a pendant. She was new to the family and dared not ask for money. She told Ethan to focus on his studies. Ethan said nothing more and went to his room. Caleb tore a synthetic crystal from the curtains. He told Ethan it was an emerald. Ethan was overjoyed. He promised to buy Caleb an expensive gift one day. Caleb threw away his gift. The day of the engagement, his grandfather called. He told him Mr. Shaw was giving Ethan 10% equity. Caleb thought Ethan was finally showing his true colors. Later, he tried to buy the cufflinks back. His colleague refused. He told Caleb how Ethan had searched for hours in the cold lake. His hands were cut and numb. The man said that some things cannot be bought back. Caleb regretted his harsh words that day. He had not had time to apologize before the kidnapping. He knew Ethan would never forgive him. That night, watching Ethan sleep, he felt a pang of guilt. The mark from his father's slap was still red. He applied some medicine to the wound. He held Ethan's hand to stop him from scratching. Ethan finally settled down. He looked so peaceful and obedient. He was always so obedient. Caleb decided to let him back into the company. It was better than letting Aiden use him. But Ethan was smarter than he imagined. He had solved problems that stumped experts for years. By the time Caleb returned, he had lost all control. He was angry, but seeing Ethan's scars, he was also relieved. He was relieved that Ethan was still alive. He let go of what he thought was his. He learned his grandfather had fallen ill abroad. Ethan's tactics had been effective. Caleb sold his shares in the Vance Company. He decided to move his business overseas. Ethan saw him off at the airport. Caleb told him he would not admit defeat. Ethan told him to do as he pleased. He had spared his grandfather once. He would not be so merciful if Caleb returned. Caleb promised he would likely not come back. Ethan was a gifted leader. The company thrived under his management. At a party, a shareholder mentioned something. Ethan had hired an assistant who looked just like Caleb. The man asked why Ethan would do that. Ethan had replied that the original was gone. He was just hiring a substitute for his own amusement. Caleb asked if Ethan was at the party. The man said Ethan never traveled to the US. Later, Caleb was in Germany on business. He heard that Ethan was also in Berlin. He found out his hotel. He just wanted to see him from a distance. It was snowing. Ethan came out of the hotel with an umbrella. He was gone in a second. Caleb stood there for a long time. Snow collected on his coat. He finally turned to leave. Ethan was standing behind him. His black umbrella was covered in white snow. He smiled as if it were a coincidence. He said he was going back for a hot coffee. He asked Caleb if he would like to join.